So today we hear the apostles claim, the kingdom of heaven has come near. The kingdom of heaven has come near. Well, where the bleep is it? Is it supposed to look like this, what we hear? Nearly 100,000, over 110,000 dead in the United States from the coronavirus, and 430,000 dead in the world. According to the pandemic epidemiologists, this is only the beginning. We need to wrap our imagination around a 60 to 70% infection rate before we reach herd immunity in the United States, which means we need to be prepared for the possibility that 800,000 to 1.2 million people will die from the coronavirus. Is the kingdom near? Is it behind the veil that is currently pulled back on our country? How do we perceive the kingdom in the grotesque ways white supremacy is playing out on Black bodies? When the riots first started in Minneapolis, I called my friend who is a pastor in St. Paul. She is white and her family is white. She was unable for hours to coax her 2 young children out of the closet after the sirens and the helicopters and the burning chased them into the closet for cover. She told me, everything around us is either boarded up or burning. We didn't get why this was happening, why our ethnic businesses were being burned. And we found out that it is white supremacists who are coming through and burning our ethnic businesses. They are making the most of the pain and the chaos. The kingdom of heaven has come near. Where? How? In the Gospel of Matthew today, we hear that the apostles were sent on their first mission to go to the house of Israel and proclaim that the kingdom of heaven is near. The apostles' time was much like our time, a time of great turmoil, violence, and uncertainty. In fact, the entire New Testament can be understood as written from this context. There was a longing for salvation from evil, for rescue from oppression. The New Testament was written with apocalyptic vision. Apocalypse means revelation or unveiling. What people saw already clearly was pain and suffering, most especially caused by the Roman Empire. But what they longed for a vision of the reign of God that would supplant the reign of terror. It was in the midst of chaos, brutality, death, and destruction that Jesus sent his disciples to announce, first to the house of Israel, and then to all the world through the Great Commission, the nearness of the reign of heaven. In our time, we too long to see a reign of justice and mercy that would supplant centuries where the rule has been racist. We long for leaders that will speak the truth and lead us out of the pandemic with as few casualties as possible. We long for the reign of God to come near today. In popular thought, the kingdom of heaven has sometimes been described as a final resting place where we are entertained by fat babies with wings, while they pluck out a melody for us on the harp. This promise is supposed to substitute for a life of suffering or serve as a reward for a life of moral goodness. But basically, it flees from the world and its pain. Biblically, however, the kingdom of heaven is not a place at all. It is a way of engaging the world in the work of repair. The Gospel of Matthew's phrase, kingdom of heaven, is more accurately translated as reign of heaven. This is what Wesley Allen, scholar on the Gospel of Matthew, says. In the ancient world, the heavens were the realm of God's transcendent power and holy will over and against the corrupt powers and self-serving desires in the world. This means that Matthew's reign of heaven as a metaphor for God's eschatological reign of justice and mercy should be understood as contrasted with the reign of the world, especially, although not solely, with the oppressive reign of Caesar. Professor Allen continues, the contrast between the reign of heaven and the reign of the world means that Matthew's gospel is thoroughly political. The evangelist is concerned that the church recognize that as they are not satisfied with the status quo, neither is God. Persecution of the church, economic disparity, exclusion of the unclean, oppression of those without power, lack of care for those who are ill and without means, peace forced on people by the sword, and so on and so forth cannot stand unchallenged by the gospel of Jesus Christ. The proclamation and work of the church should reflect God's desire that the world be healed, that the oppressed be saved, and oppressors be judged. For Matthew, then, salvation known and experienced through the Christ event is not limited to, but certainly includes, a socio-political dimension. The church's mission continues to mean proclaiming the reign of heaven is near. Today, when we say this, it must mean getting involved in resisting evil and healing the world that God loves through the work of justice and mercy. The mission that started with the 12 apostles in one place to one people does not remain exclusive. The mission moves inexorably to the whole church with the Great Commission and for the love of the world. We are today the inheritors of this apostolic ministry. Apostle means to be sent, and therefore discipleship means to go out and be part of the work of justice and mercy. Like the apostles, we take on the task of curing the sick, raising the dead, cleansing the lepers, and casting out demons in whatever shape that we find in society. And it really just means we need to get involved. The Justice and Peace Committee and Adult Education at St. Thomas will be lending its leadership to help St. Thomas have concrete ways to participate in the repair of the world. As you heard earlier today during the announcements, Cal Cornwell is working with PACT and is making an invitation to the entire church to join him and PACT in doing deep listening to those who are most vulnerable in our community and who live in the margins of our community. So please join him this Friday on this training to do deep listening to those who are in the greatest pain. And adult ed will be shelving the Romans Bible study for the summer and taking on education around race. Besides this, I know many of you already are following the Spirit and exercising your baptismal vows. Some of you, I know, have protested on the streets for the Black Lives Matters movement. Some are calling their politicians. Some are joining in efforts to resist police brutality. At St. Thomas, we will work together not just for a one-off project, but for sustained work in justice and mercy. The issues that plague us today cannot be simply or quickly addressed. We will work on the world and we will work on ourselves. We will work with endurance and perseverance, even through great suffering and even rejection, to proclaim the reign of heaven. We will also do self-examination in the ways we benefit from the oppression of others, and learn to trust God as we release our privileges for the sake of one another. So that when we declare the kingdom of heaven is near, all God's children can perceive it. At the beginning of today's gospel reading, it said, when Jesus saw the crowds, he had compassion for them because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore ask the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest. The harvest is indeed plentiful. It is now time to join in the labor. The kingdom of heaven has come near. Amen.